Okay, I think we are ready to go. Almost. Okay. How's everyone today? Okay, good. Uh, so the progress today, we're looking at chapter 6 on loans. Is that correct? So usually we have this as our open work day. What we'll do is we'll have Wednesday as an open work day for 5 and 6 together. Uh, so we're and actually after today we have caught up with the other class, which started 2 weeks earlier. So um, we're right on track. Next week, we'll have Monday will be a review day as well to work through the practice midterm or the review for the midterm. And then next Thursday, next Wednesday, I got to get my days straight. Next Wednesday, we'll have the in-class midterm exam, which remember is 30 questions, multiple choice. You can use all the resources you've been using. I encourage you to get a one-page summary of your notes so that it's easier to review and to kind of come up with that as you work through the practice midterm, the review midterm that is in Canvas. Um, any questions on today's chapter 6? What you're going to find is a lot like chapter 5. It's just, again, we're on the other side of the table rather than looking at savings programs. We're primarily going to be looking at loans. But the calculations are really the same. We're going to use the same TVM solver. And let me get my have to get this tablet started. Okay, good. One more thing. Okay, so when we're using the TVM calculator, in the end, you can use it in a handheld. You can download it from the App Store to your cell phone, to a tablet, which I highly encourage so that you have it with you. Primarily for loans, loans start with a present value. That's money coming to us. And so you're going to have this as a positive value. Payments go back to whoever we borrowed the money from. So these payments are going to be negative values because the money's going out of our pocket. And future values, typically on a loan, is going to be zero because when we're finished paying off the loan, how much do we owe? Zero. So we're going to start with some money, we're going to pay that back, and when we get to zero, the loan's done. Um, just like in the other one, there will be an interest rate that's associated that we're given. Periods is calculated the same way. Uh, it's the number of times a year that something happens times the number of years, right? So monthly would be 12 times the number of years. And that's the most typical one, but sometimes we'll have quarterly payments, which is 4 times a year. So watch for that. But again, most things in our our world is done on a monthly basis. Okay, and so then you need this compounding to match the periods. Okay, um, So we're going to take a look at loan payments, credit cards, and mortgages. Also in this homework, there is something called an annuity. There's kind of two types of annuities. A savings annuity where you pay a certain amount in and then you get a certain amount at the end. And then a retirement annuity where you put in a chunk of money, like $1 million, and then you take regular payments out of that. So kind of like a pension plan. That's how most company pension plans were funded. You would be putting money in. They would say you had so much value for your pension, and then you would get a regular monthly payment until you passed away. Or for so many years, there was many different options. So we'll be looking at those as well as these loans. So loan basics, the principal is what we start with. So you'll talk about the principal. And remember, even though you may not actually see that cash, like you're buying a house, that money comes to you. The value of that money comes to you. And then you all of a sudden own a car, you own a house, you own something. So that money is, the direction of the money is to us. So this is always, in our way of thinking, going to be a positive value. The flow is to us. Okay. There would be installment loans that we'll be talking about. So we make a regular, usually monthly payment. It's also called an amortized loan. This word here is a Latin word, mortized. If anyone speaks Spanish, familiar, you might know there's a Spanish word, mortiz, which means death. Same in Latin. So this literally means to kill the loan. So you will pay it down until you kill the loan. The reason this has maybe so much violent backdrop to it is during the Roman Empire, it was legal if you took out a loan and you didn't pay it back, it was legal for the lender to go rough you up, break your legs, even kill you for that matter. So there was this time when either you killed the loan or the loan people would kill you, very literally. And sometimes today that could happen depending upon who you borrow your money from. If it's in the back alley that you're getting some money and they're charging you 50% interest, or your left leg or something, that can still go on. It's not legal anymore. In fact, companies cannot even harass you. They can't call you after a certain time. There's protections today. But just remember this phrasing of an amortized loan, to kill the loan. It comes from a time when borrowing money was a dangerous proposition if you didn't pay it back. And again, sometimes today that can be depending upon who you're borrowing your money from and how they want to get their money back. Okay. An amortization schedule is just a printed schedule of each month how much you're paying, how much of your payment goes to interest, how much goes to pay back the principal. And if you follow all the way down, we'll take a look at a couple of these. But the amount of interest is the most at the beginning of a loan, because as you pay down the loan, you're paying less interest and you're paying more on the principal. So that's kind of the property we look at with loans in general. Here is the formulas. Again, we're not going to use formulas, but this is how we would calculate a payment. And what I'm going to point out is the mathematics. So we've got our principal value. The interest amount that's owed on it is in the numerator. We're dividing that by an amount down here. And what's this up in the exponent? Loan term in years, right? So that's time. Remember when we said we were saving money and the time was up in the exponent? So the longer time we had to save, the bigger our savings could become. What happens here is because this is in the denominator, the longer time we have, what happens is the payment will be lower. So if you pay it out over 30 years instead of 10 years, your payments will be lower. But it's a little bit, you've got to be careful here. while the payments are lower, the monthly payments, the total interest paid, because you're paying it for a longer period of time, we're going to see it will actually be higher. And some of this is the homework as you work through those problems. I want you to do more than just plug it in and get the answer. Oh, I got it right, move on. I want you to look at those answers that you're going to have, because those answers give you these principles. You'll see that if I have a shorter loan period, my payments are higher, but the total payout is less. If I go for a longer period of time, my payments will be smaller, but I'm going to pay more interest. And sometimes we make those choices. I need a good, reliable car today, and this is what I can afford. So to get that reliable car today at an affordable price, I need to get a 7-year loan, not a 3-year loan. 3-year loan might cost me twice as much on a monthly basis. Yes, it will save you time or save you money over time, because you'll get it paid off faster, but that might not be what's in the budget. So just remember, everything we're doing financially is trade-offs, but we make those choices. Questions so far? So just again, remember, everything with loans is sort of backwards from savings. And savings, having more time was great. We would have more money. For a loan, the longer time period we have to pay it back, the more we're going to have to pay out. But we're going to see sometimes, because of the effect of inflation is that your money can't buy as much. So money actually becomes sort of a cheaper commodity over time. It's not has much value. So when you're paying those dollars 20 years from now, those are cheaper dollars than to today's dollars, right? In fact, it could be that $1 today in 20 years is like only 75 cents or maybe 70 or something like that, because you're hopefully making more money and inflation and such. So a lot of people will take longer loans because of that particular purpose. They said, I'll pay it back in the future, and those dollars are going to be easier to come by. And I don't know, how many of you had a grandparent who made like 25 cents an hour? My grandfather, he'd be 100 and something today if he was still around, but he told me about when he was a teenager, he would make 25 cents a day. My first job as a dishwasher, I was making $2.50 an hour, and I thought that was good at that time. But if I was making $2.50 today, nothing's going to happen. What's a good wage today, or dishwasher or anything? What's the minimum wage? About 14, right? So there's been all this political push. It was 7 or 8, but the big difference from 250 to 7 or 8 or to 14. That's what we see is happening. So same type of work, but now, 250 used to buy, it takes $14 to buy it now. So the idea is that you're making more. So if I borrowed 250 back then and I'm paying it back today, it's a lot easier to pay it back. Cost of living increase. And that's usually based on inflation. So they're going to, we don't get that deep into it in this class, but the idea is that they have these goods like a bag of groceries, and they track how much that same bag would cost year over year. And inflation says the same bag of stuff that you bought last year now costs 2% more. Okay, we better give you a 2% raise to keep up with that rate of inflation, the cost of living increase. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I've lived at schools where, like even this one, we were doing well for a while, and then they went on like about a 5-year wage freeze where we didn't get any cost of living increases. And if it's been about 2 or 3% a year, which has been on average, 5 years of that, you can easily be behind in your buying power, right? So, and that's what a lot of the unions are doing now, is coming back and saying, hey, we didn't get these raises for this time. We got to make up, because we've lost buying power. We have effectively taken cuts in salary. even though your salary is the same, it can't buy that same bag of groceries for that same price. Okay, so here's an example of an amortization schedule. And you'll see, month 1, month 2, month 3. It's not really exciting, but you're going to do some of this in the homework. One of the things is this is a 10-year loan at 9% interest. Notice as they calculate the interest, they're using this factor of 0.0075. What they've done is they've taken the interest rate of 9%, they've divided it by 12 to make it a monthly interest rate. Okay, so 0.0075. So less than 1% per month, but that's how they're, and again, they'll give you this value. So they take that times the balance, and what they find is that the first month, the interest on the loan is $56.25. So that's, you don't get that money back. That's the cost of borrowing the money. This loan is set up to be paid back in 10 years, so the payment that's needed for that is $95.01. So notice from that payment that you make, they subtract the interest first. The remaining amount, what is that? That's what goes to pay down the loan that you borrowed. $56.25 is like a fee. It's an interest. It's a profit for whoever gave you the money. And so what happens is what you borrowed is reduced only by $38, even though you're paying $95. So we have a lower balance. But what that happens in the next month is, since the interest is based upon what's the principal at any given time, our interest is actually a little bit less, not much, maybe about 20, 30 cents, right? But what happens is we're paying a little bit more to pay down the loan, and over time, that's how this is going to work. The interest goes down, the amount of interest we're paying goes down, the amount that applies to the loan goes up over time, okay? And we will slowly pay off the loan. Yes. 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 Put it towards that principal, and then that will reduce it, and then it will have that double effect. You now owe less, and the interest that you're going to pay each month is less. So your payment, more of it's going to the principal, so it has a compounding effect. The thing is if you want to do that, the best time to do it is early in the loan. Sometimes you say, okay, let me just pay on this for a while and later. But remember, later, you've already reduced your interest. The biggest interest is at the beginning. So paying extra that first payment and after that is the best strategy, is going to give you the best benefit. Let's put it that way. Good question. Okay. And again, most of this is, we'll get to the quiz and we'll work through examples, but most of this is to give you the overview of loans and how they work, and then we'll look at how to do it. So with mortgages, you're going to do some mortgage loans, buying a house, a condo, or something. Typically, whatever you pay for the house, there's going to be a down payment, usually 10 or 20%. Usually they like a 20% down payment. So if you buy a house for $100,000, okay, purchase price, how much would the down payment be at 20%? 0.2 is going to be 20,000. Yeah, so 10% of 100,000 is 10,000. 20% is 20,000. So that's the down payment. So how much will we need to borrow? 100,000 minus the down payment. So 20,000 is the cash out of our pocket. So we need to borrow 80,000. So that's going to be our loan amount. So you'll be doing these type of calculations. So say you bought a house for this amount, you got a down payment. How much do you need to borrow? What is your monthly payment going to be? So we're going to do those kind of calculations. But just know that you need a down payment. Now, back around the early 2000s, they came up and they started doing a lot of 100% loans where people didn't have a down payment. About 2007, 2008, the real estate market crashed. So people had houses that they had 100% financing on that were now not worth as much. They called it underwater because they owed more on the house than it was worth. What are you going to do? Well, maybe you just give it back to the bank. So the bank got all these houses, which further made the values go down. But why should I pay $400,000 for a house that's now only worth 200,000, right? Maybe I should just get out of it. So that's what happened. And so consequently, we have not gone back to the 100% loans. Occasionally, you can still do that. Veterans loans are 100% financed, but that's a government-backed program with insurance. FHA loans are also low. Usually, you can get in for as low as 3% to 2 to 3%, but you're paying insurance. So there, you buy some insurance so that if you do walk away, the lender gets their 20%, right? Because they know if they take over a house in foreclosure, they got to sell it. They're probably going to sell it at a lower rate. They're not maybe not going to get everything. So that's why they don't want to loan at the full price. So mortgage insurance, so the Veterans Program and FHA both are mortgage insurance programs. There are conventional programs where you can get a lower and typically a 10% down payment. You're also going to have to buy mortgage insurance in the event that you default. The lender collects on that insurance. So it's not insurance to protect you, it's insurance to protect the lender. Um, but it's, again, there's a lot to all of this. We're just primarily going to be looking at costs of loan amounts, down payments, and monthly payments. Okay. There's also closing costs. So to put a loan together, they've got to check your credit. They got to check the value of the house. There's a lot of things that go on. They've got to in most places that will get a house loan, oftentimes they will eventually sell it on the market to investors. So they have to package it. There's all these costs. And who pays those costs? Well, the person who's buying the house. Okay. Sometimes you can get the seller to cover some of those, so they basically build that into the sales price of the house. But there's closing costs. So there's direct fees, such as for, as I said, the appraisal of the house to make sure it has value, checking the borrower's credit history to make sure that they've got a history that they'll be paying it back. And again, if you've got good credit, um, typically you can get lower interest rates. If you've got some other type of credit, you might have to pay a higher interest rate, or maybe you won't get the loan at all. And again, you might want to look into those credit rating systems. I was a loan processor for 4 years, and there's a lot behind that as far as people paying on time and stuff. But also our credit system, the rating system, has some things in there that if you even shop around for credit, they ding your score. And so it's like, aren't we supposed to try to get the best rate? If you do that, then they penalize you. So there's some things in there that are not always helpful. There's something called origination fees or discount points, and usually it's like 1% is an origination fee. That's just 1% is going to go directly to the lender. So that covers their costs. A lot of times loan officers are paid on commission, so that could be a commission to one of their employees. Also, discount points, you can buy down the interest rate. So if you want to have a lower interest rate, which will lower your monthly payment, you're basically paying the interest up front. Okay, so that's discount points. Sometimes it makes sense because you'll have a lower payment. You have to do the calculations. If I pay $5,000 now and get a lower interest rate, when will I get my money back? And sometimes it might be 2 or 3 years. Sometimes it might be 7 or 8. So you have to kind of run those calculations yourself to see if paying extra upfront might save you money in the long run because this is the house you plan on being in forever. But here's the deal: if you pay that and it takes a 7-year payback and you move out after 3 because you get a different job, you've lost that money, right? Because you pay it up front, and yes, you did get a lower monthly payment, but you might not get the benefit of that back. However, if you stay in that house 10 years, it might be, hey, we saved, that was a good payment. We've got a lower payment, and the savings has paid off, and we got our money back in, say, 5 years. So these last 5 years, and we owed it for 20 years. Okay, that's a good deal. So there's all these financing things where when you get there, you'll want to make sure you understand how they all work. A couple different types of mortgages. There's two main ones. There's a fixed rate mortgage, which when you get it, the interest rate will stay the same the whole life of the loan. The interest rate does not change, which means the payment will not change. So you're locking in a monthly payment. Typically, those are great loans when interest rates are low because you want to lock that in, and now you've got a 30-year loan with a low interest rate, and you're set for life. When interest rates are high, like they have been in the last part, they're now starting to come down. Some people will prefer to go with an adjustable rate mortgage because if it'll adjust, the feeling is we're at a high interest rate now. As interest rates come down, I'll be able to adjust it to a lower interest rate in the future. So that's what people will use adjustable rates for. It's also helpful in qualifying. Sometimes with adjustable rates, you just have to be careful. Sometimes they have what's called a teaser rate, which is an ultra low interest rate for the first 1 or 2 or 3 years, sometimes up to 7 years. So they may do a 7-year adjustable. First 7 years, it's a lower interest rate, but after 7, it'll adjust, or a 5-year adjustable. So watch for your things. But it might fit with your plans. You might plan, I'm just going to be here for 5 years. I'm going to sell this house and I'm going to move on. So let me get the low interest rate for these 5 years. And I don't care what's going to happen after that. The problem is life changes on us, and maybe we do. And so in 5 years, we might need to shop for another mortgage because maybe the rates are going up or something. But adjustable rate gets you flexibility. The adjustable rate? Typically, what you can do with an adjustable rate, they'll have a feature which you can lock in the lower rate. So that's what people will do is, let me get an adjustable rate now because rates are high. Rates are going down, and so they have a clause in there based on these interest rates. They'll tell you you can now, for a fee, something like $500 or $1,000, you can lock in this lower rate and make it into a fixed rate. So that's what some people are doing with the adjustable rates. They're betting that it will go down, and when it does, they're going to lock in a lower rate. Okay. And it's all in the details. You've got to go through this contract that you're buying. It's in the note and in the deed. And it's legalese, right? So you got to be able to read it. Have maybe a real estate agent who is knowledgeable. There's a lot out there who aren't. Or maybe going to a lawyer to actually see exactly what does this contract say. Because it doesn't matter what somebody tells you, even at the bank. They may tell you, oh, this is how it works. Their words are worthless. It's what's on that paper. And if they lied to you, how are you going to, it doesn't matter. You take them to court and they say, well, the document says this. This is what's happening. So make sure you understand what's written when you sign something, that you know what's going to go on with that. Okay, so fixed rate, adjustable rate, each has their place, and we go forward. This is, I was doing this class, I can't even remember how long ago, but I actually got my real estate license because one of my students was a broker. So I worked for him for a little bit. Well, actually, I guess I worked for, when you're an agent, you're always working for yourself. But sold a little bit, and I had one of the title companies come up with this estimated closing costs. So you can take a look at this, but I'll just highlight something. Here's the sales price was $275,000, which actually probably pretty good deal today if you're in the Scottsdale area. There's listings of stuff like charges over here. There's a settlement and closing fees. There's title insurance that you have to pay, lender's insurance. There's notary fees that somebody that you're paying for in a notary is to prove that you are the person, you are who you say you are when you sign it. There's email document fee. I thought email was free. Well, sometimes they charge for it. So anything that they can charge for typically gets charged. And there's over here, so you've got all these additional costs, almost $6,000 or $7,000 in there. There's reserves. So this is the closing costs. And they've got in here, you have to do your down payment. So out of that 275, they got a loan that was 261. I think I had her do like a 5% down payment, something like that. And they have, where is it? The down payment's somewhere. I thought it was like 13,000. It should be listed in here somewhere. Here it is. Includes 13,750 in down payment. So you'll get that to close on this house. So this person would need to come in with almost 20,000 of their own cash. Okay. And then down here are what they would have to pay monthly. They have to pay the mortgage. And this is where I said is there's mortgage insurance. So $134 you're paying for insurance for the lender in case you default on the loan. But what that did is it allowed this person to buy this house with a lower down payment. Maybe they didn't have the cash or they wanted to use the cash for something else. So, and again, these are types of things that when you start to think of buying a house, you'll want to educate yourself on mortgages. Okay. And there's people that can do that for you. And again, we've got a little bit of a preview here. Now, this is, and we're going to do this as we work through things, is how much interest gets paid on a loan. So this one is, let's see, what do we have? We've got a 30-year loan. They borrowed $100,000 and they're paying back at 8%, which is, again, right now is actually kind of high. Mortgage loans are about 5.5% right now. The blue is the interest. The sort of pink color or mauve is the principal amount repaid. And so if I go like this, sort of draw a line along this diagonal, what is more, the amount of interest paid or the amount of principal paid? Looking at that interest, right? The interest is the top half, plus it builds into the bottom half here. It's leaking into there. It's about double, but a little bit more than double the interest that you're going to pay if you pay this back over 30 years. I'm going to show you a calculation, and this is a calculation we're going to need to do. It's outside of the TVM solver, but we can do this. We can figure out how much interest was paid. So they're going to pay $734 a month, right? How many times are they going to pay that? Well, they're going to pay it every month for 30 years. So 30 times 12 is what? 360. You'll see that number a lot. A 30-year loan is 360 payments. 15-year loan is 180. So again, I did this for 4 years, and there's a few numbers that you'll always remember. So 360 payments, so $734 gets paid 360 times. So how much did they actually pay back? So this one I can't do as easily in my head. What is 734 times 360? How much of that is interest? Well, we know that 100,000 is principal. So what we do is we subtract off the amount repaid to the principal. The rest is interest. And as we said, more than half, right? 164,240 was paid for interest. So notice when you get to the homework problems and they're going to ask you to calculate the interest, you can't calculate it directly. You have to calculate the monthly payment, multiply it by how many times it's been paid, in this case 360. You take your total payment, subtract the loan amount, the rest is interest. Again, it sounds ridiculous. Why do I have to pay double for this house? But you've had use of that house for 30 years, right? So you're using it now. If you didn't have this house, if you hadn't bought this house, what would you be doing? Renting. How much of the rent comes back to you? Probably nothing. Now, there's a couple places where you get some, but usually rent, as it all goes away. It's all profit for somebody. So you're getting some things here. And again, at the end, the idea is that now you've got 100,000 that you've paid back. Hopefully the value of your house has also gone up, maybe doubled or tripled. Maybe you've got a $300,000 or $400,000 house that you own. So this fact that you over time you paid $264,000 on it is not as big of a deal. Okay, and you can get some deductions or some other things about that. And remember, what about these dollars at the end? Well, they're sort of cheaper dollars than the ones at the beginning, because over 30 years, you've gotten raises. You're able to make more money for doing the same thing because of inflation. So that's the idea. But it is a bit of a sticker shock to think I borrowed 100,000 and I pay back 264. Yes, long-term loans. That's what you're going to do. Might do the same thing with a car, but the problem with cars is they go down in value. So if you take out a 7-year loan, a lot of times that new car that you bought in 7 years, the values aren't going to substantially, got it paid off, but it's not like a house that it now has extra value. But again, you needed that car to get you to work, to make the money. So this is life in modern times. Questions? Okay, so but look at that payment. In fact, we'll be doing this in one or two of these things that we do, is that the monthly payment, we calculate that, and that's how we calculate the interest. Multiply times the number of times, get it, subtract the loan amount, and then we get our interest. Okay, that's our last slide for today. So we are ready to take a look at the quizzes. We'll work through those together. I think we've got 6 this time. Let's see. Oh, good. So I'm going to have this financial calculator open. Let me come back here. So notice, in this time, we do not have the simple interest calculator because we won't need it for loans. Everything is compounded. So I open up this is what we'll be using. And then we'll go through the homework quiz, and you'll see the homework questions are similar, but we'll get you to look at a lot of different things that are going on. Okay. Reset this. Teacher preview. Okay, now these first few are not necessarily loans. Remember, this is also going to tie in annuities and a few savings things. So these are kind of coming back from here. I'm going to take the financial calculator. I'm going to take it out of the tab, and I'm going to shrink it down so it's kind of like a calculator here. So because we're going to use it enough, I'll put it over here. So you deposit $3,000 each year into an account earning 6% interest compounded annually, how much will you have in the account in 15 years? So that's all we're going to calculate. So 3,000 each year. If we're doing 3,000 each year, where does that number go into our TVM calculator? Excellent. It's not a present value. That's if we just have a lump sum. It's a payment. And when we make a payment, is it positive or negative? Is it coming out of our pocket or going into our pocket? It's coming out, so we'll want to list that as a negative value, okay, because it comes out of our pocket and then the flow of money is there. What else do we know? We know a 6% interest rate, right? So annual interest rate, that's where that's going to go, 6%. Compounded annually, so compounding, we need to change this to annually. How much will you have in the account in 15 years? So that's a time value. Where does that go? Periods. And since it's annually, 15 times 1 is 15. Just remember, if it was monthly, it would have been 15 times 12. That's what would go under periods. So the periods depends upon how they compound. We're wanting to calculate future value. So what's our present value? I think it's okay if you just left it blank, but I like to fill it in that we know that that's 0. What we're solving on is how much we will have in the future. So we just click on the future value button and it calculates that we will have $69,827.91. What I like here is we can actually copy. So I do a Control C or Command C with the Mac, and then we just paste it here. And then you can check your answer, and we got it right. Okay, so there'll be these sort of savings. A couple of the first one are savings or retirement type stuff. So far, so good. Okay. Suppose you want to have $600,000 for retirement in 25 years. Your account earns 9% interest. Round your answers to the nearest cent. So you want to have $600,000. What kind of a value is that? It's a future value. Good. So we'll put that in. And we want that to come to us, right? So that we put in as a positive value. So 600,000 for retirement in 25 years. Your account earns 9%. Okay, we can put that in, right? How much would you need to deposit in the account each month? So that's the question. So what is our compounding? Monthly, right? So because you want to have, we don't have it now, so that's implying future. So that's the hard part of some of this is you got to read the sentence and it's sort of implied. It doesn't tell you directly. But since we want to have it, and there'll be ones that sometimes they get fooled and says you have 600 and you want to do something. But this one, we want to have it. It's a future value. We're going to yes. So the years, if we've got 25 years, how many periods would we have? Because we're doing this monthly. 25, 25 times 12. Yeah, because it's monthly. And that I don't know in my head because I only know how much? 300. Okay. 25 years, 12 payments a year. And again, we had no present value. That's sort of implied, but they didn't tell us. And what we want to calculate, how much do we need to deposit? So that's a payment for us. We're calculating the payment. $535.18. Now the negative just means that's money coming out of our pocket. When we put in our answer, we don't put in the negative. Okay, we just put in the $535.18. How much interest will you earn? Now remember, we can't go back to this calculator, does not tell us anything about the amount of interest. However, we can calculate how much money we put into the account, right? We can do that right here. Just a moment. Well, actually, I guess I don't need this one. So to answer this question about interest, we're going to take our monthly payment, the amount we're putting in each month, and we're going to multiply it by the number of months we're going to put that away, which is 300, right? 25 years times 12. Well, I guess we don't need those. So 535.18, that's each month. We're going to make that 300 times. How much money did we put into this account? Anyone get that? $535.18 times 300. $160,554. How much did we have at the end? 600,000. So the difference, the subtracting, that gives us how much of that is interest. So we take 600,000, subtract off 160, 554. Or we could, since we've got 160, 554 here, we can just do subtract 600. We're going to get a negative value, but we know we can sort of ignore that the difference is 439,446. $439,446 or 36? Anyone remember? 46. 446. It was the amount we wanted to have. Right. And so, yeah, you'll see that it was in our calculator. So that was our future value. But again, you can't directly calculate the interest. You have to calculate the payments, how many payments you made, and then you subtract off of what you ended up with or the loan amount. So you'll do this in multiple ways. Okay. We'll check our answer. And yes, we got it. We got it correct. So far, so good. Okay. I think we got, let's see, 6 questions total. So now this is a slightly different. You have 500,000 saved for retirement. That's a present value. We have it. Okay, so come here. I'm going to reset this. Present value. We have it. 500,000. Your account earns 3%. We can put that in 3%. How much will you be able to pull out each month if you want to be able to take withdrawals for 25 years? So we want to take out a payment. We want to take out money each month. So that's actually a payment, but it's going to come to us, right? It's going to come to us. So for that matter, I'm going to put this 500,000 as negative because we need it invested. I guess it's in the bank or someplace at 3%. The payments will come to us. Here's the question though, what's the future value? How much will we have left in 25 years if we take it all out? Exactly. So this is that idea. We're going to take all our money out over 25 years. We're going to do it monthly. So how many periods is that going to be? 12 times 25. We did this earlier. I think it's still 300. Yes. We're going to do 300 periods. Got it all set up. Now all we have to do is calculate the payments. So if we had 500,000, how much could we get each month? Well, not bad. $2,371.06. Right, for periods 25 times 12. So that's one of the key things is you've always got to make that calculation for the periods. Okay, how many, again, monthly is 12 times the number of years. So yeah, so yeah, we should block these off. But so 500,000 is what we have. And again, this is one way, this is how retirement works. They're buying an annuity. So they take that 500,000. 3% is not a lot of, but it's sort of a guaranteed return. So usually it's insurance companies who will do these kind of products. You put your 500,000, you're guaranteed to get this monthly payment for 25 years. Now, insurance companies, the reason why they're involved in this is a lot of times people don't, 25 years, what if you live longer than that? You want to keep getting money. So there is products you can buy that have a life expectancy. You will get that until you die. If you die early, say in 10 years, the insurance company actually made money because they don't have to pay it back anymore. If you live for a longer period of time, you keep getting the money. So there's various types of annuities with a lot of different payback options. There is a 20, like this would be a 25-year certain. They pay it out. If you die early, you have a beneficiary, maybe your spouse who's going to continue to get the money, or children or something, but you can't set it up that way. Check our answer. There we are. So this is part of what we do is after you saved your money, how do you get it for retirement? Okay, last three questions are going to be on loans now, mortgages and such. So we'll focus on this. So you can afford a $1,050 per month mortgage payment. And again, as you do these, remember your numbers will be slightly different. You found a 30-year loan at 6% interest. First of all, how big of a loan can you afford? So we're going to reset this. So 1,050 is our monthly payment. Is that positive or negative? Negative. Good, because it's coming out of our pocket. We know the loan, the interest rate is 6%. So we got to get all these details in there. The period, since it's 30 years monthly, 30 times 12, 360 payments or periods. What's our future value going to be on a loan? 0, because we're going to get it paid off, right? Because if we don't pay it off, it takes care of it. If we don't kill the loan, it kills us. So now we can calculate the present value. How much loan could I get with these details? Just have to calculate present value. We could borrow $175,131.20. And they have us rounding it to the nearest dollar. So that's just $175,131. Oops. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. I went to number 5. Sorry. We put it here. 175, 131. I'll check it here. That's exactly what we got. How much total money will you pay the loan company? Round your answer to the nearest dollar. How do we calculate that? Well, it's sort of already here. We take the amount of our monthly payment, multiply it by the number of times we've made it, which is 30 times 12, right? So we're going to take our 1050 times 360. That will give us the total we've paid. $378,000 even. So that's what goes into here. How much of that is interest? How do we calculate that? We subtract off the amount that we borrowed. So we'll subtract off the 175,131 because that's principal, right? And the rest is interest. I shouldn't have cleared. 378, 1, 2, 3, minus 175, 131. Oops. 175, 131. 202,869. 202, 20869. Okay, so does that make sense? Again, we're taking that monthly payment times the number of times we made it. That's our total. And then to find the interest, we subtract off what we borrowed. Those are, you'll just kind of make them again and again. And remember, if you kind of examine these things as we go, it's good. Now this one, I think the next two are kind of all set up for us. So I've only got one attempt at this. So you want to take out a $300,000 mortgage. The interest rate is 6.1%. The loan is for 30 years. Those are the important things. Oh, they gave us our payment. We don't have to calculate that. They gave us the monthly payment. How much will still be owed after making payments for 15 years? Round your answers to the nearest dollar. Okay. So what we do know is how much we borrowed, 300,000. We know the monthly payment. We know the length of the loan, and we know the interest rate. So let's put those things in there. Let's reset. So 300,000, the amount of our loan. We know the payments, so we're actually going to put that in as a value, $1,817.98. Thank you. Yeah, see, I forget about those things until later and I make a mistake. So yes, that is negative. You guys are good. Even I forget it all the time. It's going away from us. Good. We're not going to deal with the future value because actually we're going to come up with that. The interest rate was what, 6.1%? So 6.11. The periods, we're going to come up with that in a moment. Now, they don't want us to calculate the whole length of it, even though it's a 30-year loan. They want us to figure out in 15 years what is still owed, right? So that's where we're going to put periods. We're going to put 15 years of payments. 15 times 12 is 180. What we're going to do is calculate the future value, how much is still owed on this loan after 15 years. Okay. Click on that. We still owe 214,000. Again, that's a negative because we still have to pay that back somehow, right? So that's weird. After 15 years, you would have expected half of it to be gone. That's not how a loan works. You pay mostly interest in the first part. So we haven't even paid off half the loan in half the time. Okay, so $214,065.89. Actually, it'll get rounded up. So 214,066. $66 rounded up. I'm going to check here first. Yep, that's what it is. Okay, so this. No, we don't subtract because they just want to know how much do we still owe. Now, if we subtract it, we could figure out how much interest we've paid in that first 15 years. But the question was simply, how much do we still owe on it? So that's the idea, is to get you to see that when you take out a loan, halfway through, you haven't paid half that loan, because mostly what you've been paying is interest. Second half, you'll pay more of the loan than the first. That's why if you want to pay extra on the principal, do it in the early years. No, because they wanted it rounded to the nearest dollar. So that's why we don't use the decimal, but we did round up. So instead of a 5, we rounded up to a 6 in this case, just because that's what they wanted. So far, so good. It's got one more question. This one's kind of a similar one, but it involves a little bit more detail. So Roberto bought a house, and this comes from one of my colleagues. His name was Roberto. He was a real estate agent as well, and he taught math here. He's retired since, but anyway, this is one of his problems. Roberto bought a house for $450,000. So that's the price of the house, not necessarily the loan. He paid 14% down, financed the rest at 4.4% interest, which is pretty good in these days for 30 years. We've got the monthly payment here, so we don't have to calculate it. How much will he really pay for the house that he bought for $450,000? Okay, so how much cash came out of his pocket? That's what this question's about. So what's the first thing Roberto had to pay out of his pocket? 14% down payment. So how do we calculate that? That's $450,000. He had to pay 14% of that as a down payment. So 450 times 0.14. Well, actually not, I guess if I do 0.14, I don't need the percentage. And again, I don't do that with the TVM calculator. I just do it with a regular calculator. 0.14. Yeah, so 450. You have a percent key, you could do 14%, or just in 0.14, because that's 14% divided by 100, right? 63,000 was the down payment. Okay, so he paid that cash. For 30 years, he made monthly payments of $1,937.94. And how many payments was that? 30 times 12, 360. So this is how we paid back. So we're going to multiply that. $1,937.94 times 360. Wow, almost $700,000. 697, 658, 697, 658. And they don't ask us to do any rounding, so we better include the cents in this 0.40. So this is what he paid over 30 years, but he also paid this, so we have to add those two together. You could do the old school adding by hand, or you can put it in your calculator. I come up with 760,658. Now, he also probably, when he borrowed the money, paid the closing costs, but they didn't include that in this story, so that's all we can calculate. They didn't ask about the interest, so we didn't have to subtract off the loan or anything. They just want to know total paid. So that's the down payment plus all that he paid for the mortgage, $760,000. We can enter that here. 760, 658.4. Our answer, and that's correct. But again, that's 30 years. They've owned the house. He's been able to live in it for those 30 years. He probably would have been paying that much for rent anyway and got nothing back. Now he owns the house. 30 years, if it's gone up by say 4 or 5% a year, maybe it's worth 1.5 million now, right? So that's the idea behind real estate. But you buy it today, but you've got to use other people's money. So yes, you're going to pay that fee. You're going to pay interest on it. But remember, there's a couple things working for you. Inflation actually works, because it's going to be cheaper dollars down the road. You're doing one of the most important things right now by going to school. Getting an education will hopefully get you into a higher earning potential. Not only that, it will hopefully get you into a career that you enjoy doing. And when you enjoy what you're doing, you're okay with working. Look at me. When I was in insurance, I wanted to retire by the time I was 50 if I could. It was a stressful job. I wanted to get out of it. Teaching, I'm 62, and I'm hoping to keep going until I'm 80 because I love what I do. So once you get in get in to do what you love to do, everything else will take care of itself. Even if it's a lower paying job, which it is. I talked to my old boss. He's a multimillionaire. He owns like 5 condos in Hawaii, and he's living in Oregon. He owns a couple buildings there. I was right there. If that's what I wanted, I could have had it. But I also would have probably maybe died of a heart attack or something because I was stressed out. I'm happy now doing what I love to do. So that's the thing you're doing right now is always think about, getting an education. Money is a consideration, but always consider you got to love you got to at least enjoy what you do. You got to not hate what you do. I've been around a lot of people who just hated what they did, even if they were good at it and made money. When you hate what you do, it just eats you up. So always pursue something that brings you at least some level of joy, and everything else will take care of itself. Believe me. So is that good? 6 questions. We're here. Work through chapter 6. Again, it's very similar to what we were doing with chapter 5 in the savings, the same type of calculator. And you guys are doing better than I did with the negative money and the payments and this and stuff. Wednesday will be a work day, and we won't go because we did the lecture today. And then next week, Monday, will also be a work day to work through. So what you've got is any of the homeworks, any of the homework quizzes, keep working on those. Those are still value, you can still earn the full value on them. And then at some point, start crossing over, take a look at that review. I think there's 60 questions there, something like that, or there's a bunch. They will get you ready for the 30 questions that's on the midterm. And remember, as you go through that, you get to use some notes. So I would encourage you to kind of write down your notes. If you had to go look something up, write it down, a formula or something, or even a description of how you did it. How do I use this calculator? When you take the exam, the midterm, I will have a page in Canvas set up for you that will have all the links to all the apps we've used for all the various things. So you could just go to that one page. You'll be able to pull up all the different calculators we used. If you find different ones and you want to use them, you can do it. Maybe put them all on your phone. You can use your phone. Any phone apps you want to use, you can use them. You'll have access to your computer. If you got any bookmarks, you're welcome to use those. Again, this is about taking the exam, just that you've learned how to work through these types of questions. Good shape? All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'll post this.